16 years ago, I moved to South Africa to work as an international bird guide. I was going to be sent all over the world, which, as a keen traveller and birdwatcher, was a dream come true. One of my first trips was to Madagascar, a place I'd been dreaming about going since I was a kid. It's full of fascinating lemurs, chameleons, and of course endemic birds. We visited a famous place called the Ranamafana National Park, a stunning location set in a steep valley with beautiful lush forest. One day we hiked up a mountain in search of the endemic yellow-bellied sunbird Asity. Similar to the sunbirds we have in Thailand, but totally unrelated. An example of convergent evolution where unrelated species feeding in the same way end up a similar shape. This bird lives only on high ridges, feeding on the flowers of a strange parasitic plant. The guide took us to a spot and pointed up at some red flowers and told us to wait. After a few minutes, a gorgeous little bird shot in and put its long curved bill in the long flowers. Then it was gone. We'd seen it. It was a really special moment. The tough hike had been worthwhile. This bird is found nowhere else on Earth. I came back every year, and on my first few visits we saw it every time. In the following years, fewer and fewer times. Then more recently, none at all. So, what happened? Well, another similar species called the common sunbird Asity, a more generalist species that feeds on lots of different flowers, had moved upslope, out-competing it. The yellow-bellied sunbird Asity was pushed higher and higher until finally it disappeared, at least from the places that birdwatchers could get to. This was my first personal glimpse of the effects of climate change on birds. Birds are indicators or storytellers. They tell us when seasons shift, when habitats change, when the climate itself is changing. In the last few decades, the ranges of migrant birds have changed. In the northern hemisphere, both breeding and wintering ranges have shifted further north. In Britain, where I'm from, barn swallows, which we also see in Thailand, visit every year to breed, but before would winter down in Africa. Now, some spend the winter in Europe, or even the south coast of England. Colourful European bee-eaters and bright yellow European golden orioles used to only breed in places like Spain and France, now sometimes nest in England. Little egrets, which we see in Thailand, never used to be in the UK and are now seen everywhere. Things are changing. But I want to talk to you about birds that don't migrate, about resident birds, and more specifically, birds in mountains. With global warming, these birds can only move one way, and that's uphill. And eventually they run out of mountain. For me, after a lifetime of watching birds, a species going extinct is not just a statistic. It's incredibly sad. It's really heartbreaking. A few years ago, I was lucky enough to get to Hawaii, still home to some spectacular birds, but also known as the bird extinction capital of the world. The native forests there were once filled with a wonderful variety of endemic birds. But in the 1800s, sailors brought mosquitoes. Later, avian malaria arrived, and within decades, most of the lowland species were gone. They had no resistance to this disease. For a long time, the mountains offered safety, too cool for mosquitoes. But now, as the climate warms, the mosquito line creeps uphill. Mountains are like this, broad at the base and pointy on top. As birds are pushed higher, there's simply less space to survive. This beautiful bird is called the iwi, one of these native birds being pushed higher and higher. I felt very privileged to see this bird, but a colleague of mine saw another couple of species the year before my trip. But by the time I arrived, they were gone. Just in 1 year, they'd moved higher up. A local bird expert told me they're vanishing. In a few years, they'll be extinct. In Hawaii, they've started introducing sterilized mosquitoes to try and save these birds. Sterilized male mosquitoes mate with females, which then don't produce young. A really clever idea, but maybe it's already too late. This story is quite a unique situation, but in most of the world, climate change is affecting the birds by changing their habitats. Citizen science shows us what is happening. Species are moving, sometimes disappearing. But to understand why, we've got to know more about habitats. A few years ago, when I co-authored the book Habitats of the World and later Habitats of Australia and Habitats of Asia, my view of the natural world expanded. Instead of just thinking about birds, I had to think about plants, soils, climate, and even fire. So I want to talk a little bit about habitats, more specifically, forests. Why do some forests stay green all year while others turn brown? When trees have enough water, they keep their leaves. In the tropics, when it's dry, they have less water than they need, and they lose their leaves. You may know, in Thailand, we have a rainy season and a dry season. Let's think about Doi Suthep here in Chiang Mai. Some people may have noticed that in the rainy season, the whole mountain is green, but in the dry season, it's green on the top, but brown at the bottom. Why is that? Well, just like people, trees need water. When it's hot, they need more water. As you go higher up the mountain, it gets cooler. Also, warm air rises, then it cools, water vapor in the air condenses, and clouds form, and rain falls. That's why mountain tops are often cloaked in mist. So the tops of mountains are cooler, and they're getting more rain. The trees have enough water to keep their leaves all year round. It's a magical place up there with shorter trees covered in moss and ferns. It's one of my favorite habitats in the world. These are called montane evergreen forests or cloud forests, and they contain different species from lower down. If you go birdwatching on Doi Suthep, down at the bottom, you might see a red-billed blue magpie, a beautiful bluebird with a long tail and a red bill, while at the top you might see a green cachoa, a gorgeous blue and green bird that eats berries. So both the trees and the birds are different on the top and the bottom of the mountain. Let's think about fire for a moment. These dry forests that lose their leaves, these deciduous forests, have many species that can withstand fire. We see fire almost every year here in Chiang Mai, but every rainy season they go green again. Higher up, the evergreen forests don't usually burn because they're not as dry. But just remember, montane evergreen forest trees are not as fire resistant. So what happens when temperatures rise? Two things. The trees need more water, and the water vapor in the rising air doesn't condense as much. So it's hotter with less rain. In effect, the dry season gets longer. So in future, instead of a dry season where Doi Suthep is brown on the bottom and green on the top, with global warming, maybe it will be brown on the bottom and brown on the top. What will this mean? Maybe the plants will change. Maybe the birds will be pushed up. With it being drier, maybe fires will climb higher into the montane forests where trees, as we know, are not as fire resistant. This drying of forests with climate change leading to increased forest fires is being seen around the world, in the Amazon rainforests, in the peat swamp forests of Sumatra and Borneo. This is the Doi Intanon sunbird, found on the top of Doi Intanon and nowhere else in the world. What effects will climate change have on it? Will its habitat change? Will it lose its food plants? Will it get outcompeted by species moving up? Will montane forests dry out and burn? Maybe it'll be fine and adapt. Instead, other species could be affected. Let's think about these places. Madagascar, Hawaii, Chiang Mai. One possible future, the yellow-bellied sunbird Asti disappears. The iiwi, gone. Doi Suthep brown and burning. The Doi Intanon sunbird silenced. Another possible future, we notice, we record, we learn, we act. The data we gather becomes knowledge. Knowledge becomes solutions, and species can survive. Big-scale solutions like reducing emissions are important, but to save species, we need to think of small-scale, innovative solutions. So the question is, which story will we choose to write? If you visit one of these places, you're a tourist. If you record, you're a citizen scientist. If you record a bird, you're a citizen ornithologist. If you record a plant, you're a citizen botanist. If you record which plant the bird is feeding on, you're a citizen ecologist. Sounds better, right? Those links are important. This is the kind of data we need to be recording. The beauty of citizen science is that we can all help. I've been bird watching since a little boy. I used to write down all the birds I saw in a notebook. Now I log them onto apps like eBird and iNaturalist. These are two huge citizen science platforms. I've put in thousands of records, but combined with millions of other people, they become a global database. From it, we can see birds arriving earlier in spring, breeding further north, vanishing from the lowlands, creeping higher up mountains. COVID meant that I wasn't able to travel around the world for a couple of years. But the silver lining of that was that I had more opportunities to take my son and his friends into nature. I showed them things they wouldn't have seen otherwise. I taught them the names of species, interesting things about them, and how to be citizen scientists. It was a really rewarding experience. Starting tonight, download iNaturalist. Tomorrow, take a picture of something on your phone. Learn the name of something. Go on Wikipedia and read something about it. That single act joins you with millions of others. See what it feels like. Some of you might do it again. Some of you might be part of the solution. Explore, contribute, learn. I want to finish by playing you the song of the Doi Intanon sunbird. Now I want you to imagine a world without it. That silence is possible, but it isn't inevitable. Birds are the storytellers of climate change. By listening to them, by sharing what we notice, we give the future more than silence. We give it hope. Thank you.